America's junior miss is symbolic of the nation's ideal high school senior girl. The most appropriate person to tell us about the most important social function, the high school prom.
Carrie is one of the most recognizable horror symbols to ever exist. It has inspired endless movies like The Fury and The Initiation of Sarah right after it was released, plus countless extremely important pop culture moments from Lana Del Rey to Olivia Rodrigo to Lady Gaga, but also of course Hole and Riverdale. So it is pretty massive for a book and a movie combo that came out in the 70s. Carrie has become a symbol for weird girls and ostracized people, but it also is a very potent revenge story. And this visual representation of innocence turned dark and evil was so revolutionary in its time. So the novel came out in 1974 and it was Stephen King's breakout novel. He was doing a lot of scary stories for underground magazines and transgressive magazines, but nothing like a novel. This was his first huge story. And I think the movie paid him $2,500 or something to make the film. So it was really a big deal that it even got made into a movie. And the 1976 film adaptation is so full of dread that it is honestly still hard to watch to this day. And just like the story of Jesus, going in something is going to go horribly and violently wrong. I think the biggest mistake people make when they're going into the story of Carrie is self-inserting into either the Carrie archetype or the people that bully her archetype. But I think doing that is missing out on what makes it so good, and I want to talk about that today. So, big spoiler warning for Carrie, both the novel and the movie. I'm going to talk about both, break down both, but I'm not going to be talking about the remakes because those aren't real. So I want to start by making you look at this painting and what you see and what you feel when you look at it. This is most likely an oil painting or an oil pastel painting. It is by Polish artist Alexandra, posted on her Tumblr about 10 years ago. It's alongside some other really creepy art in the themes of the shadow self and trauma and the uncanny. It's very obvious that the girls are excluding the one who's in the focal point of the painting that looks like that. But personally, I see there's a lot more here than just bullying. The one with no face is staring right at you. You are a part of this. You are in the position of one of the girls in the circle. And their uniforms are signaling one really important thing, that they are clothed and masked, and socially they are all in line. The uniforms here are a representation of rules being followed. And importantly, the girl with no face has her uniform on. There is a sort of sad and harrowing desperation to fit in a situation where you will never, and it's very obvious to everybody else. Something is so wrong and it's so apparent, nothing that you can hide. And she's sitting and behaving in a docile way, but when you look at the painting, it's scary and it's obviously a horror painting. You're afraid and it's creepy, but the girls are not afraid, they're laughing. They're sort of circled like sharks and they're laughing at her. And to laugh at that, you would either need to be not seeing it or be delusional, or you might be laughing so you don't become scared. And I think Carrie is about that idea. I think bullying and cattiness are a symptom of a much deeper and darker issue, and Carrie's social exclusion is just a symptom of the main thing. The main cause is a fear, a very potent, cloying dread that never goes away. It is like a shadow of our human fears that we need to stay buried. And whether you are laughing at somebody to keep that buried or you pretending you don't see it, you have to do something to deal with it. So just like you ignore the girl with no face, Carrie gets relentlessly bullied until she totally kills everybody. So Carrie, the film, begins on an outdoor PE court and the girls are all in uniform, and then it switches to them in the locker rooms. And I think that is very, very specific and meaningful because the uniforms are painting a picture like this painting is. where you're switching from seeing these girls in their uniforms in a social situation where they're all in line to a more animalistic locker room situation where the movie's hinting that there's something deeper going on here, more primal. So Carrie as a person is based on real life people from Stephen King's life that he will not name. That's in the foreword of the book, I believe, and he talks about it. So in a lot of Stephen King's work, he references the idea of class. It's something that he's experienced firsthand, and it's very important. And as an American author, it's a massive thing. In almost every one of his stories, especially The Long Walk, he loves to reference class. And Carrie is no different, obviously, because it's his biggest, first novel. So in the beginning of the book, it's explicitly referenced that Carrie White is a reference to the idea of white trash. Carrie is a part of an underclass of people, and that is a big part of why she's bullied. The town where she lives in Chamberlain, Maine, is a very typical archetypal American town with really clear hierarchies and social structures. So the book is set in the 1980s, and Carrie, her full name being Carrietta White, is 16 years old. She's really heavily ridiculed and ostracized for her weight, her acne, and her fanatical religious mother, and the way that she's raised Carrie to be also very religious. And her father is dead from a gruesome work accident. She's described as unpopular, unattractive, and poor. And an excerpt from the novel that describes the way that she behaved at school is, she could still remember the day, the stairs, and the sudden awful silence when she had gotten down on her knees before lunch in the school cafeteria to pray. The laughter had begun on that day and echoed up through the years. So before our story starts, she has been very bullied and very ostracized because nobody's teaching her how to fit in. So one day after a PE class, Carrie gets her first period in the locker room bathroom. So because her mother is so religious and equates the idea of a period with sin, Carrie doesn't know what that is. So of course, if you start heavily bleeding, you're going to think you're dying. And so Carrie starts freaking out. She's screaming and being hysterical. She thinks that she's dying and bleeding out, and she's trying to get some help. So the girls in the locker room, led by a girl named Chris, mock Carrie and throw tampons at her and yell, "Plug it up." And Carrie is thinking that she's bleeding to death. Sue, another girl, describes feeling an odd mixture of hate, revulsion, exasperation, and pity for Carrie, then a welling disgust. Carrie is hysterical and screaming and crying, and the gym teacher eventually notices this and comes to help. She yells at the girls and then tells Carrie to go home for the day. The teacher is a bit annoyed by this, and on the surface, she seems like a very helpful and empathetic person to Carrie, which she is in a way, but really she just wants Carrie to fit in. Now, Carrie has latent telekinetic powers. She has a story about when she was a child, how she made giant stones and blocks of ice fall from the sky onto her house because her mother was abusing her. And this flashback started when Carrie went over to the neighbor's house, who was wearing a very small white bikini, and was asking the neighbor stuff about what are? She didn't know what they were because her mom calls them dirty pillows. So she didn't know what those were. And her mom responded by being hysterical, freaking the fuck out. And then a rainstorm came down of stones and giant blocks of ice onto Carrie's house. So Carrie is wondering if she could control something like that. So on the walk home, she's thinking about how she could flex this power that she has, but she's noticing that it takes a lot out of her, her heart rate skyrockets. So as Carrie arrives to her mother's house after the worst day ever, she got horribly abused by her classmates. It's the first day of her period for the first time, and she's in a lot of pain and cramping. Carrie describes arriving to her mother's house as a mix of love, hate, and dread. There are also massive green, grotesque vines growing on her house. So when Carrie gets home, her mother immediately is like, "You're very sinful for getting this period. I can't believe that you did this." She tells her that periods came from sin, and it is her fault that she got one. As the Bible says, the first sin was intercourse and Eve was weak. And that is what her mother is repeating to her. So Carrie's mom's name is Margaret, and she's very deeply religious. And she's created this like abuse, solitary confinement prayer closet for Carrie, where there's like a bunch of religious imagery on the walls, a lot of crosses, crucifixes, and depictions of hell, paintings. And the entire house is covered in religious imagery as well, but she specifically made this prayer closet to force Carrie in and lock her in for like 6 to 24 hours. There's no bathroom or food in there, and Carrie just has to sit in there and pray. There are a lot of shocking and violent depictions of hell and suffering and hellfire, and there's a lot of torture in the Bible, and there's a lot of paintings about that in the house. Carrie's room, though, has a few paintings of Jesus with lambs, which she likes the best. And she talks about how she's scared of some of the paintings that her mom has put up around the house. There's also a massive crucifix with a bleeding corpse of Jesus in the living room. I don't think it's in the movie, but it's massive in the book, and it's like really creepy, and it's like this really bloody corpse just as decor, and it's really unsettling. So the next day at school, the gym teacher, her name is Miss Desjardins, she reprimands the girls who were throwing tampons at Carrie, and she's really mad at them. They get a week's detention. Now Chris, who is the most outwardly vitriolic towards Carrie, actually gets prom taken away because she refuses to comply with the detention and she thinks it's unfair. And this getting prom taken away and getting to detention just hardens Chris towards Carrie so much more. And she tries to get her really influential, wealthy lawyer father to say that Miss Desjardins is a bad teacher, abusive, etc. And that doesn't work. So she's trying everything she can do to go to this prom. And because none of this works, Chris decides she wants to take revenge on Carrie. More on that in a bit. So there's this other girl involved in the incident named Sue, and she's arguably like the second most important character in the book. She feels really bad about what she did and what happened to Carrie. And this causes like a rift between her and Chris, and it just gets worse and worse. So Sue asks her very popular and handsome boyfriend Tommy to take Carrie to the prom because Sue feels so bad. Carrie is really suspicious and standoffish, but she accepts the invitation. And during this conversation, Tommy is realizing that Carrie is actually pretty and she's not like this monster that people believe she is. Tommy is a very important character because he is constantly questioning what his community is telling him. So more on that later, but he is different than the other men in this school. So fueled by anger, learning Carrie will be attending prom with Tommy because you need a date to go to prom. Chris persuades her boyfriend Billy to go and butcher a pig with his friends and collect the pig's blood and spill it on Carrie during the coronation of prom queen. And Chris knows that Carrie will win because she's been rigging the election the whole time and she's been convincing people to vote for Carrie. So Billy's a total psychopath. In the novel, he's way worse. In the movie, he's played by John Travolta and he's actually more like comedic relief, but in the book, he's quite scary and horrible. To set up a scene of like his vibe, Billy's car was old, dark, somehow sinister. The windshield was milky around the edges as if a cataract was beginning to form. The seats were loose and unanchored. Beer bottles clicked and rolled in the back. So on prom night, Carrie's mom is hysterical, obviously begging her not to go to prom because that is like extremely sinful in her eyes, and she's like worried about Carrie. But Carrie goes anyway, and the first couple hours of her prom are incredible. Like, she's having the best time ever. She is feeling like things are getting better and falling into place, and she feels like it's a magical time. People are being nicer to her, like not completely nice, but some people are just treating her normally for the first time. And Tommy is starting to like really like her, and it's like her perfect night and everything is seeming to go really well. But when Tommy and Carrie win prom king and queen and get like coronated on the stage, Chris and her boyfriend Billy are hiding under the stage, and they have this rope that will drop 2 big buckets of pig's blood onto Tommy and Carrie. And Chris is given a decision at the last moment. Do you want to do this? And she's like, yeah, I need to do it. She pulls the rope, the buckets fall. One bucket actually falls on Tommy and kills him. Like, it's not explicitly said that it kills him, but he sloops over when it hits his head. He never wakes up. So the bucket on Tommy kills him. The bucket that falls on Carrie puts her in complete shock. She's afraid to open her eyes, and she just feels like the warmth of it, and it's like coagulating. It's just really gross. And all she hears is like shock and then laughter. So she's in total shock and she starts fleeing the building. Somebody sticks their foot out and she falls, and then she tries again to run away, and then she falls again down the stairs. So at this point, she's incredibly broken. And when Miss Desjardins, the gym teacher, starts running towards Carrie to help her, Carrie like uses her mind power to shove her out of the way into a wall. So here's where the anger and revenge starts to grow into something like completely uncontrollable. She seals the gym with her mind and activates the sprinkler system. This causes like an electricity issue that electrocutes and kills multiple people. She watches one guy get electrocuted to death, and she's like laughing in a really unstable and maniacal way, like she starts to like all this pain and suffering. A boy caught hold of one of the microphone stands and was transfixed. Carrie watched amazed as his body went through a nearly motionless dance of electricity. He looked funny and she began to laugh. Also, she notices a live 220-volt electricity cable was crackling on the floor, and beside it, Rhonda Simard was doing a crazed puppet dance in her green tulle formal. Its full skirt suddenly blazed into flame and she fell forward, still jerking. So this wiring issue causes a massive explosion that hits the school's fuel tanks and blows up the school, causes a massive fire. Only a few people, including Miss Desjardins, escape, and Sue was never there, so keep that in mind. So this is where Carrie's reality basically snaps. She begins to make her way home, causing terror in the streets. She opens a gas main line, causing explosions, and Chamberlain's downtown is leveled, basically. She tears down live electrical wires, kills a bunch of people that way, ruins the water supply so there's no water to put out the fire. She also fucks with the phone lines in a way where no calls are getting through, so the call center people are just sitting there with no way to transfer the calls. They're just hearing screaming and horrible things. They can't transfer them, so they're effectively cut off from civilization, and her powers cause people to know that she's coming, and Sue actually goes and looks to try and find her. So Margaret, Carrie's mother, has become completely insane, thinking that she must kill Carrie because it is just like how God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. Margaret has to kill her daughter. So when Carrie comes home, Margaret stabs her with a kitchen knife, and Carrie uses her powers to stop Margaret's heart. In the movie, I actually like the way that she kills Margaret better because it is a little bit more cinematic, but she uses a million knives with telekinesis to stab her, and it's really crazy. So Carrie is mortally wounded, and she goes on the road, meets Chris and Billy, flips their car, kills them. So this incident in Chamberlain is known as the Black Prom, and it killed over 400 people. The rest of the town is unable to deal with the tragedy of the loss, and Sue is there while Carrie has her last moments because she was fatally wounded. So that also happens. It ends with everything being destroyed. In the book, Carrie's house gets destroyed with falling rocks, and in the movie, her house burns down with fire. In the movie, there's also this amazing scene where her hand rises from the grave, and that has been incredibly influential in a lot of horror media. That is a very important scene for horror people. So that is the very basic plot. If you know a Stephen King book, there's so much important descriptions of things that make you feel like you're there. So it's hard to really do justice to it. So Carrie's story starts with the menstrual period, and her mother being such a Bible thumper, it's really, really hard not to compare biblical meaning of blood to how much blood is in the Carrie story. There's pig's blood, there's period blood, there's murdering blood on knives, it's a lot. So in the Bible, the foundational meaning of blood is a few different things, but it's mostly very positive. So blood symbolizes life and transformation or atonement, spilling blood could atone for your sins if it was a sacrificial lamb kind of thing. In Leviticus, it says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it for you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement by the life. And in Hebrews, indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. But it also signified like covenant and promise. In Exodus, behold the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. If you've been to church, you've said that. And in church, Catholics really do believe that the blood is the wine that you drink in communion, and that wine has turned to blood. So you're drinking the blood, you're getting all the positive benefits of the blood, and the blood drinking is a direct symbol, or not really a symbol, like in the church they really do believe that, but it's a symbol for Jesus saving humanity with his own blood. Like in Matthew, drink of it all, for you this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many of the forgiveness of sins. And in Ephesians, in him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses. So biblically, blood is everything. It is poured out and given for noble sacrifice. So when you're spilling blood or giving blood, you're doing a noble sacrifice, or you're doing a noble covenant, or you're sacrificing for your own sins and you're getting a positive benefit. But there is a big caveat to that. And it is those benefits only apply if you're a man. So what does the Bible say about women's blood and what that means? For example, in Leviticus, period blood is called menstrual impurity. And in the Bible, during a woman's period, she is considered ritually unclean. And anyone who touched her objects or anything that she sat on or laid on has also become ritually unclean. Ritually unclean basically means you can't do certain prayers or whatever, you can't do certain rituals in the Bible. There's also temples in the world that you can't go into if you're on your period because it's considered unclean. So in the Bible, having a period isn't necessarily a sin, but it's for sure a shame. And that is so heavily inferred because if it wasn't a shame, why are you impure when you have it? The Hebrew concept of impure refers to your ceremonial status. So blood spilled by a woman without her meaning to, mind you, it's completely non-optional. You need to do it. Blood spilled during your period was considered as impure as touching a dead body or having a skin disease. So Carrie in the film, the first few scenes you get of her is her spilling red blood on this white floor with these clouds of steam around. And before she notices that she's bleeding, she's relaxed and she looks like an angel. But once she notices the blood, she starts freaking out. And her peers start to metaphorically stone her with period products and yell at her and taunt her. This is so obviously a reference to biblical impurity of having your period and the shame that you need to feel for that. These girls are instilling shame into Carrie because she doesn't even know what a period is. And childbirth in the Bible is even more infuriating because after giving birth, literally the life, giving life, you're considered very impure for a while. So in the Bible, if she bore a son, she was unclean for a period, then underwent purification. After a daughter, the purification process was longer. For example, in Leviticus, she brings an offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean. So after a woman gives birth, she has to go bring atonement to a priest to become clean again. And lastly, God in the Bible made childbirth a punishment for women because of the original sin of Eve having schmecks. So in Genesis it says, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. So my question is, how is birth not sacrifice? How is the blood of a period not the ultimate symbol of life? Because you're literally giving your body up to produce life. It's a part of the cycle. So there's just this glaring hypocrisy with the Bible and with blood and how different kinds of blood are blessed versus unclean. There is so much blame and shame attached to this completely normal thing. And that is the catalyst to the hellfire that Carrie brings down to earth. There are also so many graphic depictions of violence and sacrifice in the Bible, but when they talk about Mary birthing Jesus, there's radio silence on like any of that process. There are no physical details of Mary giving birth to Jesus because it wouldn't make sense for that to be like a noble act, like giving birth and the pain and blood and sacrifice of that, to also in the same Bible be like, it's unclean and you're impure when you have babies. Mary was a virgin as well. So she had the most pure and perfect birth that could possibly be. And that is what Margaret wanted for Carrie. She wanted Carrie to be so pure and virginal that she never even got a period in the first place. So all of this biblical context gives you a look into why Margaret behaves the way she does and why Carrie is the way she is. And blood is a fantastic visual symbol for this story because of all that context. So if blood in our society is equating to a shame that you have no control over, how does that connect with the theme of bullying? So there's a passage in the novel called The Shadow Exploded, and it's referenced a lot, and it's in the foreword as well, but it is so simply put, that is exactly what Carrie as a story is. She is the shadow exploding. It is a response to hypocrisy and a response to trying to repress it. It will explode. And anytime there's blood in this story, there is an instance of the shadow coming to light. And I'm going to talk about what that means. So all of the characters in this book are explicitly uncomfortable with their shadow, except for Carrie, who unwittingly brings that shadow to the surface for people around her. For example, the period blood is impure and unclean based on society. It is unclean, yet running through everybody. It is shameful, yet it is the reason that anybody even exists. And the shadow self as a concept is pretty simple. As children, we learn which behaviors cause approval and disapproval from our families, teachers, and friends. If we want to have some sort of control over our lives and create pleasant outcomes, we tend to develop those things which are acceptable and repress those things which are not. Those things we repress or deny about ourselves become our shadow. The qualities we place in our shadow aren't necessarily bad, they're simply the ones we are not rewarded by our family system or culture. So Carrie is bringing other people's shadow to the surface constantly. Even by being born, like by existing, she's bringing her mother's shadow to the surface, which is her mother's like extreme shame and guilt and regret about having and falling in love. And she has like this weird thing about it. We don't actually know her full backstory, but obviously she feels extreme regret. And she feels regret for even being a human being. Like she wants to have no impulses at all. One of the most tense moments between Carrie and her mother is when Carrie says something to the effect of, I don't want to be like you, I have a chance to be normal. And Carrie's mom freaks out because that's something that she doesn't admit to herself, that maybe her way isn't the right way or the best way. Like it's something she could never admit. This basically breaks her mother's sanity because her mother has built a very careful cage of delusions that would repress anything that she would want besides being a perfect angel that never has any desire. So just by existing and not conforming, even if it's not by choice, Carrie is bringing her classmates' shadows to the surface because she is making them think about things that are uncomfortable. For example, two of the major characters that bully Carrie are Chris and Sue. Although they're very, very different people, they both do two things in common, even though they're on opposite ends of the spectrum with how they feel about Carrie by the end of the book. Number one, they both have bullied Carrie for years and they both threw tampons at her. And number two, they have smacks with their boyfriends and don't particularly like it. But that is expected in this like teenage, typical 80s high school relationship, is to do that. So they both do it not liking it. Sue describes it with her boyfriend Tommy as like being reamed out with a hoe handle. And Chris's descriptions of it with her boyfriend Billy is toxic, aggressive, coercive, and definitely SA. So those are two examples of completely different women falling into really similar social standards. It's an expectation. And although one is significantly darker and worse, they show how corralled these women are to conformity. Another woman in the story, Miss Desjardins, the gym teacher, is faced with how Carrie is annoying to her. Like in her inner monologue, she's like, Carrie's annoying. Why can't she just fit in? So Carrie is bringing the shadow of that to light. So even though Carrie is really awkward, she's a physical representation of the idea of free will and choice. If someone is a living example of another option, you start to question the option that you took, or even that you had one in the first place. There's a really important scene in the book that's missing in the film where Sue is breaking down in tears on this date with Tommy, describing how badly she feels about what they did to Carrie. And for maybe the first time, Sue starts thinking about the fact that popularity and conformity is a huge performance. It takes effort and rollers and shopping and racism and teaching from a mother or a friend. And when Sue starts to examine this idea, specifically about what her life will look like in 10 years, she starts to turn to like an anger, and her guilt forms into something really complicated. The idea that her life will be predictable makes her really uncomfortable. Because Carrie is a representation of someone who is not conforming, even if it isn't by choice, she makes Sue and other students think critically about what choices they are making. And this performance of femininity that Carrie cannot do is so complicated that, like, when Sue's talking to Tommy about it, Tommy just talks about how boys use violence for this, and he says verbatim, "What did that silly bitch ever do to you?" Because, like, even though that's really rude, he doesn't understand why this is so complicated, why they would do something so cruel to her, and why they keep doing it. He doesn't understand why Sue is so affected by her own guilt and so angry. And because Tommy willingly went with Carrie and actually fell in love with her, he dies as a punishment for crossing this social boundary he's not supposed to cross. Because Carrie, as a book and a movie, is not about real life, but more about metaphors for how our society functions. The most iconic scene from, like, most of horror, like, this is a really iconic scene of the prom coronation, is a perverted and twisted version of the ideal grouping. Basically what everybody should want to achieve. And this is like a very overdone thing at this point, like the ideal being the prom queen and the athletic prom king. Like we've seen this a billion times. But when Carrie was made, this is like a new idea that they would pervert and twist that into a way where it's horrifying. But Carrie does not fit here, and Tommy does not fit here. And the students laugh at her when the blood starts spilling. And like they're in shock, but a lot of them are laughing. Someone put their foot out to trip her. And Carrie can tell that the gym teacher, Miss Desjardins, is giggling on the inside. So when Carrie kills everybody, she thinks that the screaming sounds like music. And her destroying the town with fire and rage is an explosion of the shadow exploding onto everybody that they're trying to keep repressed. Because what she does as a character is to challenge what is hidden. So what I think is great about this story is it works on like a billion different levels, and it's something that you can analyze for a super long time because of what heavy themes they're dealing with here, like blood and fire and conformity and like tribe mentality. But I think what is like the worst part about it is seeing this Carrie pattern repeat until the end of time. Like, I think people like to pick somebody who represents things they don't like to confront about themselves, and then attacking that person feels really good because it's basically like you get to attack your shadow. It's like perfect. Like, we found a life hack. We don't have to deal with it because it's just there. We can attack it. So it's this like thing where they hate Carrie, but they kind of need her to exist because they need something to stomp on. It's better to stomp on than be stomped on, right? So as a disclaimer, I am no expert. This is just my feelings and my thoughts. And if you watched till the end of the video, thank you so much and love you so much.